Good afternoon, everyone. This is Tiffany with Healthy Passions. I wanted to get my promised video about ancient Roman marriages out today. I am really busy, so I can only dedicate about maybe 30 minutes to this. So I'm going to try to get as much into this video as possible so I don't have to make a part two. If you do not know me, I am Tiffany Talley, a certified personal trainer, certified wellness coach, and a certified energy healer. So basically, what I do is I help singles who have large purposes heal themselves, prepare themselves, and get ready to walk into their purpose with confidence. That's what I do through holistic health. Everything that I do is biblically based. So if you want to schedule a consultation with me or any other of my services, you can reach me at healthypassiontiff@gmail.com. I'll say it slowly, healthypassiontiff@gmail.com, and that is how I book all of my appointments. With that said, let's get started with the ancient Roman marriages. I'm going to break down some quick notes and references to that so that we can get to the second half of the video easily. So, most ancient Roman marriages were possible for girls at 12 and for boys at 15. Um, Even though it is noted that most boys were not married until about the age of 26 because they had in their culture that males were mentally unstable, considered mentally unstable from the ages 15 to 25. So they didn't recommend them to marry. So in a lot of cases, you got real young girls marrying older men. Okay. All right. So let's go here. In Roman marriages, just like in a lot of ancient um, history, the fathers arranged the marriages. They had complete control over who you married. You had no say so whatsoever. And if he did not approve of a marriage, let's say you went out and eloped, if he did not approve of that marriage, the father had the power to annul the marriage or end the marriage without you having any say so. So basically, your father chose your partner. Most marriages were set up as these three types. It was either a business deal, or the woman was purchased, or what you call common law marriages. If you're not familiar with common law, they still have that today. That's where you're living with someone for a certain amount of time or a long period of time, and you're considered together in common law married. All right. So the girls and the wives were very young. Of course, the males were always older. Um, there was really no marriage ceremony, so it kind of makes you think about modern marriages, how people spend $50,000 to $80,000 for these elaborate weddings, when that wasn't the Roman custom. It wasn't a main custom back in the ancient times. They didn't spend a lot of money on ceremonies. They would have just a small little thing and then family and then go home. So it wasn't like an elaborate wedding party like they have now. All right. Love or romance was not a factor in these unions, usually hardly ever. Every once in a while, you would get a couple that actually loved each other, but most of the time, love had nothing to do with it. What I noticed also is they used a lot of superstition in the small ceremonies that they had. Okay, so they would give honor in their weddings to Mother Earth and false gods. Okay, now number 9. This is one of the superstitions that I found interesting to kind of give you an idea of how superstitious these people were. So the bride would walk down the streets with her husband and drop a coin on the street to honor the street gods. And then she would give 2 coins to her husband to honor the spirits of his house. Okay, so very superstitious. Everything had spirits at this point. Okay, and number 10, if a woman was barren, because the whole concept of marriage was just for financial gain and to bring forth children. So if the woman was barren and couldn't have children, the man had every right to divorce her. Number 11 would be the pagan worship of ancestors and false gods. They had gods for everything. They had a god for the pantry, a god for the kitchen, a god for the floor, a god for the. They had false gods in everything, and that's just how they believed. And so it's a very superstitious culture. All right, so let's compare that to modern day dating and marriages. And it surprised me once I compared it how Romanized our marriage system is, especially here in the West. It is Romanized very badly. But there's some differences, but let's go here. So, this is what I say we borrowed from the Romans in this culture. Number one, the thought of common law marriage. In ancient Hebrew marriages or biblical marriages, there was no such thing as common law marriage. You were married. It was no, I'm gonna live with you for 6 years and then we just considered married. Nah, you were living in an unlawful union at that point. You were not considered married. You would have to actually get married and follow the ceremonies to do so. Number two, there wasn't like a real engagement time or a time where the spouses would get to know each other. In some cases, they didn't know each other at all. They didn't even see each other. Let's say you're like 12, like you're 6, and your father picked out your husband at 6, and you won't even see him until you're like 12, ready to get married. So there wasn't like a lot of time to get to know. So where they kind of romanticize Roman culture is where they're like, oh, love was involved. No, it wasn't. It was not. That was actually very common to not have romantic love for your spouse. Oh, the rice throwing. They had a custom to where they would throw peanuts or something like that to the wedding guests, and then the guests would throw it back as a token of appreciation. And that's where we get the custom of throwing the rice when a couple gets married. All right, the idea of lifting the wife over the threshold, that is a Roman custom. And what that was in times before, a lot of times a wife could be abducted and they would pick her up and take her. And it was kind of like a barbaric practice at that time before they became more civilized, but they still kept that custom of picking the wife up and picking her up and taking her into the household. It was a symbolic abduction, which is kind of barbaric if you ask me, but whatever. Now, we also borrowed their patriotic society, their extreme patriotic society, how men had just unfair double standard rules, and women, they had hardly no say so until later times and in the law. So that's very common. We still see that today. It's expected. And I just think it's kind of unfair that one culture is represented so strongly in this society when other people have different and even better customs that they have from their own people, from their own lands, but they don't care. They want it Romanized, right? So the next one is, now the Romans did believe in love, sex, and romance. However, it was never hardly with your spouse. It was with outside lovers. So within the adulterous relationships. And what I find interesting about this culture and very many European cultures is that embedded in their culture, a man could take a lover and it wasn't a big deal, but he could not only take another woman, but he can take another man or a boy for a lover, which is totally un-Hebrew. Uh, that's not acceptable in our culture at all whatsoever. Um, Even just the other woman, let alone another man or a boy, especially not a boy. Hebrews will not allow that. That is not our custom. That's not anything that we ever allow. From ancient times to now, that's not a part of our customs. All right. So marriage was, like I said before, we also borrow the fact that marriage was usually mainly for status and financial gain in children bearing. So um, it was becoming of a woman to just freely go to her husband and get married. They did what they call a mock abduction for honoring their old customs of abducting people's wives, and the groom would drag her away, and that's just the ceremony that they had. Um, with all of this being said, another thing we borrowed from Roman culture is high divorce rates. Go figure, with the status that they have, everything to where all these extramarital affairs, just the unfairness of the treatment of women and things like that. So it's not a surprise that they had high divorce rates, and that's what we see here because we have Roman style marriage practices in our laws. Oh, and I wanted to point out that women couldn't cheat, so that was a double standard. Like it was unbecoming for a woman to cheat, just like in society today. Today, men could cheat with 20,000 women, but if a woman cheats with one man, oh my God, the world ends. Foolishness, foolishness. All right, well, that is it. I wanted to get this video out. I was very busy today. I didn't even have time to really show my face. I'm booking a trip and I had to take my son to the doctor and just had a lot of other stuff to do. And I have other work to get finished, but I wanted to get this video out as promised. And thank you, Holy Spirit. So what I'm going to do is just kind of put it like here, what the Holy Spirit is saying, especially you Hebrew Israelites, is the Most High wants us to unromanize our dating practices, our marriage practices. He wants us to come back to our heritage of marriage. It's a richer, more sustainable, more what's the word? Help me out, Lord. More sustainable, more thank you. He said civilized way of being in marriage. And he wants us to let go of the barbaric practices of other cultures outside of our culture. Not saying that their culture is wrong. It's wrong for us. It is not our culture. It doesn't go well with our being. So he wants us to spiritually, mentally, and physically come back to our culture, which is biblical marriages. I love you guys. Take care. Consider that this is going to be just one video. I am not going to do a part two because I have to get to another subject. Um, as I stated before, my business is mainly on singles, but there are singles that are called to marriage. So the Most High wanted to do a very clear cut series about marriage and how important it is and how important it is to choose the right partner. And it kind of gives you the incentive to work harder as a single person to actually get your stuff together to be 100% for marriage, to show up 100%. Because if you now know what marriage entails and what it takes to be married, you kind of have a scale of where you are and where you need to be to prepare for marriage. So that's very important to the Most High. He's very involved in our relationships, especially marriages. I love you guys. Take care. This is Tiffany with Healthy Passions signing off.